We are recording the interview of Rick Tober. This interview is being conducted by David Barry from the Wright State University's Veterans Voices Project. This interview is being recorded at the Holiday Inn Hotel in Fairborn, Ohio. It is 2:30 p.m. on June 6th, 2019. Why don't we start with where and when were you born?
I was born in Buffalo, New York on April the 27th of 1947. And my parents were, my mother was Violet Bateman Tober, and my dad was Louis George Tober.
What did they do for a living?
Let's see, Dad was a millwright, and Mom didn't work until very late. You know, like I was almost getting ready to leave for the Air Force when she started working.
Did you have any brothers or sisters?
I had a brother, Randy, who passed away on January 13th, 2013.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
Have a brain aneurysm.
Did any of your family members serve in the military?
My dad was in the Army Air Force back in, late in the war. He was, I think it was 43 to 45, I think.
So he fought in World War II?
Yeah. Yeah. He was bound and determined. They told him he was too old. They didn't want him, and he fought his way in. So I sort of took after that. You know, I saw the patriotism that he had. And of course, after that, after the Army Air Force split, became the Army and the Air Force, my cousin went in the Air Force, whom I looked up to. He was my hero. And when he joined the Air Force, I says, well, that's for me too then.
So what were you doing before you joined the military?
Just got out of high school.
And what year did you join?
1966.
And which branch, or you said the Air Force?
The Air Force, yeah. Actually, I got drafted.
Oh, that would be my next question.
I got drafted on September 16th. And I ran down to the recruiter's office. I says, can we do something about this? He says, sure, we'll get you in on September 14th. So that's how I got in the Air Force.
Were you worried about anything going the draft route, with them picking your job for you, or?
Well, when I took the test, what are the ASVAB? Yeah, I guess that's what they call it. I scored high in the medical field, so, and I had leaned toward that anyway. So I said, "Well, that's good. I'll go in the medical field." So, and to tell you the truth, I never even thought about going overseas at all. It never dawned on me, oh, that could be a result, but as it was.
So did you plan on joining before you got that draft letter, and that draft letter just kind of got you in the door sooner?
No, it was a shock. It was like, oh, now what do I do? And I knew I didn't want to run like so many of my friends did, up to Canada, wherever, you know. I didn't want to go that route.
How did your family feel about you joining?
They were behind me 100%. So I felt good about that.
That's good. So you joined in 1966 in the Air Force, took the test and scored high in the medical field.
Mm-hmm.
After that, did you go to basic training?
Mm-hmm.
Where was that at?
Amarillo, Texas.
And how was basic training for you?
I was probably middle of the road. There's no way I was, top of my class or anything. We did a lot of running, and I never ran before, so that was new to me. And run to the chow hall, run to this, run to that. So I learned that. Yeah, it wasn't, basic training wasn't a big deal for me. I got through that quite well. In fact, I think I know it improved my physical being. I came out like 10 pounds lighter and probably 30% more mass than I had before. So in that respect, it was good.
So then after basic training, did you go to an AIT or tech
Yes.
school?
Med tech school in Wichita Falls, Texas, Shepherd Air Force Base, and did 9 weeks of med training.
And what was that training like?
That was interesting because from what I understand, we got as much knowledge, book knowledge, as an RN did. And of course they always emphasized, the worst case, sucking chest wounds, amputations and stuff like that. So that was kind of interesting, I'll say, because I knew those were, life-saving measures that I needed to know.
So were you being trained to work in the ER or out in the field?
Field, yeah, definitely. Did a lot of bivouac training.
So did you have to do the pig training or?
No, what's that? I'm not familiar with that term.
So I was an EMT before I joined the Army, but I was never in the medical field in my military service.
Mm-hmm.
But after talking to my medics, they had a bit of training where they had to do like sutures and gunshot wounds on a live pig. And I was just wondering if that.
No, that came my first permanent duty station. It was a real eye opener. When I got to my first duty station, I said, "These are real patients. I'm taking care of these real patients." But I learned IVs and suturing and stuff on the spot, on the job. Yeah.
Okay. So after basic training, where did you go? Or I'm sorry, your tech school.
Tech school. My first duty assignment was Westover Air Force Base, Massachusetts. The 814th Med Group.
So outside of dealing with actual live patients, what was it like being over there?
It was kind of like a job. It was a job, and I was married at the time, so I got to live off base, and I worked in the hospital, went home. Come in the next day, worked in the hospital, went home. So it was kind of like a regular job. It was nice.
Now, did you meet your wife before the military
Yes.
or during?
Before, yeah.
Huh? Were you guys high school sweethearts? Or?
Kinda. We knew each other from school anyway, yeah.
Now, how did she feel about you joining the military?
It was upsetting for her, but as a good military wife, she maintained.
So, did you have any issues adjusting into the military at this time, or was it all pretty easy for you?
At this point in time, I don't think I had any issues. It was pretty well. I mean, I knew my job. I'll do my job and and get it over with. Yeah, I guess that's about all I have to say on that. But yeah, didn't have any issues, I don't think.
So what were some of your duties like then, just on a normal day-to-day?
Okay, at that point in time, I was working the surgical floor and took care of surgical post-op surgical patients, pre-op surgical also, before they went to the emergency room or to the OR. And I learned a lot of treatments for certain conditions and so forth. Back then we had a run on pilonidal cysts. It's a cyst that grows on just off your tailbone, and when they take the cyst out, it leaves a deep cavity. So you had to pack that with iodoform gauze, and it was painful for the guys. I felt bad for them, but obviously the iodoform gauze lets it heal from the inside out. They were all the better for it. So.
That sounds painful.
Yeah. Let's see, what else do we do? As a side note, it was cute. A doctor got these pilonidal cysts, so another doctor had to operate on them. Now, the interesting thing about the military hospital is when you are admitted as a patient, you lose all rank.
I didn't know that.
So here's this captain screaming for pain medication. He wants to write his own script. Sorry, you can't do that. So he had to be a regular patient, and it changed his whole attitude of how he treated his patients post-operatively.
You getting to see what the other side is like? So how long did you stay at Shepherd Air Force Base?
Oh, Shepherd, that was short. That was 9 weeks, I think.
Okay. Where'd you go next?
Westover. That's where I did. That was my first permanent assignment.
And how long were you there?
2.5 years.
And were things different there from, were things different at Westover than Shepherd quite a bit? Or
Oh yeah, like that. Like I said, Shepherd was teaching. Okay, you had a squadron. You dressed in your military uniform every day. You marched to and from class. And at Westover, it's a job. The interesting thing about medics is at the time we wore whites, not fatigues, and so it was kind of different than the other guys. Flight line mechanics, they wore fatigues. We got to wear whites, and so that part of the job was, I'll just say, it's more unique. Okay, it almost seemed like you weren't in the military, except you'd see people's ranks, every once in a while. But and it was nice because in the hospitals, it was more about medicine than military. I liked that, I met a lot of good time friends, doctors, nurses, who were, officers, you weren't supposed to affiliate with the officers, you know. But yeah, they're good people.
Did you make a lot of connections with the people that you served with?
I think I did. They were short-lived. I mean, I only did 4 years and didn't hang on to a lot of them. I wished I did. Well, we'll get to the NKP part later, but the one connection I made was at Nakhon Phanom, Thailand, when I went in to report in to my duty station. Went into the commander's office, and I popped to attention. I saluted, and he waved me down. So we don't do that around here, you know. And again, he's a doctor, you know. He says, "Where you from, boy?" I said, "New York." He says, "Whereabouts?" I said, "Buffalo." "Whereabouts?" Now he's getting real excited. I said, "Hamburg Orchard Park area." He says, "I'm from North Collins." We hit it off right off the bat. And he was lieutenant colonel at the time. And we'd share letters from home, you know, stories from home, whatnot. Just, he was a great guy. A commander like no other I've ever met. He led with a heart, not with, you know, with a mind or a stick, if you will. He was just a great guy, and he made full bird colonel while I was there, and he gave me his lieutenant colonel oak leaves, and I cherish them to this day. And when I got out, he was supposed to go to the Pentagon, and when I got out, I tried looking him up, and he had passed away. But he was a great man. Paul Hoffman.
Was there anyone else that sticks out?
Well, I had a couple of NCOs that I was friends with. One guy, John Knight, him and I went through basic training and med tech school and Westover and NKP together. We just followed the same route. It was really kind of neat. He was from Massachusetts. And when we got home, he actually came to my house in New York, drove down to see me. That was kind of neat. I enjoyed that. We had a good friendship. Carl Simon and I, we were partners because I worked at evenings. I worked night shift in the emergency room at the dispensary at NKP. We were buddies even out of work, you know, not just work. And I cherish those guys. I cherish the memories.
So how long were you at Westover before going to Thailand?
2.5 years.
So were you trained pretty well before going over?
Oh, I believe so. Because everything I learned there, learned tech school wise and from Westover hands on, I was prepared. And I think they knew that when I arrived there. They said, "We're going to put you on the night shift," because there was no, well, there was a doctor available, but he didn't like to be woken up, you know. We were in charge. So it's kind of nice to know that they thought that much of me, you know.
So leading up, about ready to deploy, did you have any rituals, or was there anything that you did right before you left that memorable, or maybe?
Well, it was more out of necessity. I had to find a place for my wife and child to live while I was deployed, and found him a place in West Seneca, and it was, I mean, the tension was already starting. She was afraid, you know, of me leaving her alone. I could feel that. I wouldn't say any rituals, but yeah, I mean, just the necessities, making sure she was taken care of and safe. She was close to her parents, so make sure she was all right.
And getting out and going out and getting drunk before leaving for a deployment, that can be a ritual too.
No, I didn't do that. I was never really a drinker. However, there was a short timers party that we had to go through. That was, of course, short timer for me was not only short timer coming back to the States, but getting out too. So we'll get to that later.
So you go over to Thailand. This is your first time leaving the United States?
Oh yeah.
How was it seeing a different culture?
Oh my goodness. I remember landing on that tarmac and looking out the door of the plane, and I'm going, I stepped into the outer limits, the twilight zone. I mean, we were flying World War II aircraft, you know. And this is Vietnam. I'm like, what am I gotten myself into here? Yeah, it was a real culture shock, and of course, total language barrier. No clue how to talk to these people. Thank God we had some interpreters at the dispensary. Yeah, real culture shock. I think I handled it well, though. I actually developed a great taste for Thai food.
What was your favorite dish?
I liked the common people's food rather than, like today, if you go to a Thai restaurant, you get served these exotic Thai meals who, like, the emperors would get, not what the regular people ate. I call it their soul food, you know, and it was called cow pot, and it was rice with either beef or chicken or whatever, and then with a gravy in it. Delicious. Just their seasonings was phenomenal, and it wasn't all hot. Everybody thinks Thai food is hot. It's not necessarily all hot, because I'm not big on hot.
Were you able to do anything fun while you're over there, or recreational activities?
I think my job was fun. My job, running, you know, working the midnight shift in the dispensary, it was fun. I enjoyed it, and especially when I got transferred from the emergency room to the flight surgeon's office. That was even better. Now I got to interact with, again, the officers and so forth, flight crew.
So were those your duties while you're in Thailand?
Yeah.
So you started off working in the night
ER, yeah.
And then to surgery in aircraft, or I'm sorry.
No, I worked to the flight surgeon's office.
Oh, flight surgeon's office.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. My job was typing up 1042s, grounding the people who come in with ear infections and whatnot. They can't fly, so got to take time off. That was my job. That was fun, because the longer you've been in the military, the more you know how to work the system. the colonels and the majors, they would come to you and go, "Can you fix me up? I got an ear infection, Yeah, sure, here. Take some of these pills, Whereas the second lieutenants, they'd come in, "I demand to see a doctor." Okay. And then the doctor would ground them and lose all kinds of pay. Funny.
Were you mostly treating just common ailments, or were there a lot of combat-related injuries?
I had some combat-related injuries and non-combat injuries. One almost comical. I mean, it's sad. He was drunk on the back of a pickup truck, and he fell off. He hit his face in the gravel. And, of course, the sudden stop on the pavement or on the road woke him up, He came out of it real quick. And they brought him in, and all he could say, crying, all he could say to me was, "Don't leave a scar, don't leave a scar." He had split his lip wide open. And I spent about 45 minutes picking gravel out of his face. And I did my best to suture him back up with the knowledge that I've learned through tech school, Westover, and my emergency room. Now, working the emergency room at night, you don't see the patient come back to get the sutures out. I just saw him once, and there you go, So I was in the NCO club one day, and I get this tap on my shoulder. He says, "I got to buy you a drink." Okay. He says, "You don't remember me?" I said, "No, I'm sorry." He goes, "You sewed up my lip." And I looked, and there was no scar. So that felt good.
So how long were you in Thailand again?
370 days.
Oh, a little over a year. So were there any stories or any memorable moments in Thailand that come to mind outside of what you've already shared?
Let's see. Well, my short timers party, we can get to that, I guess. Okay. There was a ritual that you had to do to become a bona fide short timer. You had to drink a bottle of Seagram's VO, and the ribbon around the neck of the bottle became your short timer's ribbon. But you had to drink the whole bottle first, and then you took the ribbon off and you wore it in your lapel. So, like I said, I'm not a drinker. I drank the bottle. At first, it's like, oh, I'm never going to get through this. And then after a while, it's, oh, that's not so bad. Oh, I can do this. Then you're looking for more. Thank God they didn't let me drink anymore. But I remember climbing a banana tree, picking up. You ever seen a banana leaf? They're huge. And this is like 4 o'clock in the morning. I went into the dispensary ward, and I'm blessing all the people on their beds. And they carried me back to my hooch and put me to bed. And I was laying there, and I said, I can't stay here. I can't stay here. I literally rolled out of bed, crawled to the door, puked my guts out. That's the only way I survived. But that's the ritual.
There you go. So when you got to put on the short timer ribbon, how much longer until you actually left the country?
30 days.
So were you top dog for that 30 days?
Oh
or-
yeah, yeah. In fact, I didn't wear a uniform for the next 30 days. We got a new lieutenant as what was his title? Executive officer, I guess. And he wanted to know who I was. And, and his clerk was a friend of mine, and he goes, "Oh, that's Sergeant Tober. You don't want to mess with him." He's short. So when I left, they took my cowboy boots. We had this big cabinet. Guys used to bring snakes in and whatnot, and we'd put them in formaldehyde and show, like a display case, what kind of snakes were in Thailand and so forth and so on, and different bugs and stuff. And they put my boots, my cowboy boots, in the display case. So I was immortalized there.
So how was it then coming back from Thailand?
Really rough. I came back, and that's all I wanted. I just wanted to come home. And I didn't want to talk about it. I didn't want anything. Just let me get on with my life. And I think my wife had a huge problem with that, because I didn't want to talk to her. I didn't want to talk about it, Let's just move on, And that marriage ended, And from what I understand, an awful lot of Vietnam veterans have also divorced. And I do believe this is before PTSD had a label. So it was tough,
Was there anything that helped you deal with it, or?
Time. That's all. I guess that's it. Time. And three marriages later, I realize, it's me, not my wives, So, and things like this reunion has meant the world to me. To be able to sit down with these guys and talk. I've never met these guys before, but we're comrades. We're brothers. It helps.
Well, I only have a few more questions left for you. What are some life lessons that you feel you've learned from your military service?
Okay. One is how to take orders. Know when to take the orders. Know when to argue. How to wait. I never knew how to wait before the military. Military makes you hurry up and wait. Stand in line for this, stand in line for that. It's taught me patience. I think that's probably the best thing I took home with me.
And then, did you get out of the military shortly after getting back from Thailand, or did you still have some?
No, I processed out in Travis Air Force Base as soon as we landed.
And what did you do after you got out?
Went to work for the New York State Department of Mental Hygiene, which was taking care of the mentally retarded. Stayed in the medical field, I guess, I was more or less a glorified babysitter. 4 doctors tried to teach me or talk me into getting my MD, but I guess I felt I wouldn't make a good doctor. I don't know why I decided not to.
Did you enjoy your work at least?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
That's all that matters. Is there anything like you feel like we haven't discussed or should be added to this interview?
Well, I joined the Air Force because I didn't want, a buddy of mine and I both went down to the recruiters at the same time. I joined the Air Force. He joined the Navy. I got out. He stayed in. He did 26 and a half years in the Navy. Where was I going with that? That's what happens when you get old. The mind is the second thing to go. And I can't remember what the first is. But repeat the question.
Okay.
I forgot.
All good. Is there anything you feel like we haven't discussed? Or should be added to this
yeah,
interview?
that's right. I joined the Air Force because I didn't like the water. I figured I like to fly. You know, that's cool. And I got to serve as a pararescue one time on an HH-43 that became my bird. I love that helicopter. And we rescued a guy from a special ops base that I found out just recently was in Laos. We didn't have any troops in Laos, according to President Nixon. And anyway, reportedly he was bitten by a cobra. As it turned out, he was spit in the eye by a cobra. And I did my best to treat this guy on the way back, in the flight back to NKP, and saved his eyesight, saved his life. And I treasure that flight. I mean, I wish I would have known I could do that all along. Like, you can really do that? I didn't have to spend my whole time in the ER. I could have gone and did this and done that. Flare kicker, that was another job in the Air Force with voluntary. You get on a C-130 and kick flares out at night, magnesium flares, phosphorus, white phosphorus grenades and whatnot. They were all open, and I didn't realize that. I could have had a lot more fun than I had. But yeah, I enjoyed it.
Well, I only have one more question left for you.
Go ahead.
What message would you like to leave for future generations who review this interview?
Love this country. Love it with all your heart. Because there's no other country on the face of this earth that has the freedoms that we do. That's what I'd like to leave everybody with.
All right. Well, this concludes our interview. I'd like to say thank you for taking the time to do this interview, and thank you for your service.
I appreciate it.